Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 9. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us here for this Wednesday Steelers Nation. Dave, just 2 days of training camp left. This will be our regular episode of the podcast. Talk about things generally non-training camp related, but winding down and just happy that this, not happy that it's almost over, but just happy to kind of get back and eat not fast food and just be able to be around the site a bit more. But camp's been fantastic and the whole team's done a great job.
The team has done a great job. You've done a great job, but I am glad it's almost over. I'll say it. Look, how you holding up, all right?
Yeah, I'm still standing, as they say. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I guess. But no, camp's been great. I'm so happy and grateful that they're back at Latrobe and getting to talk to people that read the site. It's been very nice to see, and people have said some very nice things about you and the site and just what we do at Steelers Depot. So camp's been fantastic. But sure,
Wait a minute. Back up. People were saying nice things about me.
They like you, Dave. Yeah, they really do.
Yeah. I'm sure.
No, seriously. There's people that love the podcast that have been listening to you since day one. There are a ton of Steelers Depot OGs out there.
All right. The thing is, some other up and coming OGs sure have made this year's training camp a lot more easier to cover, especially when we have Alex out there as many days as we do. Alex goes out there, leaves kind of a lot of times early in the morning, obviously comes back, gets home probably an hour or so after practice ends, and then gets right to work on his diary, and then has to turn around and do a late podcast with me. So within that, we've had some incredible help and guys that are all kind of full timers now, if you will, and that obviously being Matthew Marksey, Josh Carney, Jonathan Hightritter, and Joe Clark. Those guys have just been just absolutely helping me, kill it on this side of things. At least we'd like to think that the coverage has been, phenomenal throughout this. Not only what Alex does. So shout out to those guys because I really dread this time of year. I've made this known to my guys all the time because when you don't have Alex, at home helping out on that end and he's away, you're missing a valuable piece there. So they have really helped in this process. And 2 days left, Alex.
Yep, ready to get after it, and a lot happening yesterday, especially whenever I was away. Steelers, a lot of moves, a lot of interviews, a lot of press conferences, things like that. Let's start though with the roster moves. Pittsburgh, like the rest of the NFL, had to get their roster down from 90 to 85 by yesterday at 4 p.m. under Omar Khan. They did that ahead of their Tuesday practice, so a little departure from what Kevin Colbert would do. Steelers making 6 moves actually at the time, putting 2 players on injured reserve and safety Carl Joseph with that ankle and wide receiver Anthony Miller with a shoulder. So both are out for the season, unfortunately, for those 2 guys. Waived was defensive tackle Doug Costin, offensive lineman Jake Dixon and Chris Owens, and punter Cameron Nizelik. In the process, the team signed William Dunkel, the big guard from San Diego State. He worked at right guard yesterday in his first practice with the team. And then a little bit later in the day, there was one more move that came in, and that was center Nate Gilliam being waived and the team claiming Lions center Ryan McCollum off of waivers. McCollum's got a little bit of NFL experience, and so that seems to be the reason for the move there, a guy that has a little more, bit of a bigger resume. And so pretty busy day, especially when it comes to the offensive line yesterday for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, also had a injury settlement in there as well, too, right? Javon McKinley. Did you cover that or no?
I did not. Yeah, Javon McKinley
yeah.
was released with the injury settlement.
Yeah, we'll see how many more of these happen. They've got quite a list on IR now at this point, right? And I think we kind of covered that recently. But even after McKinley, you still have. I guess McNichols is going to stay there because what McNichols waived before McKinley, and what Moultrie. Waived before McKinley. So I think the time has kind of expired as far as getting injury settlements done with them. McNichols, Moultrie, Tuzar, Skipper, Ulysses Gilbert III, Anthony Miller, and Carl Joseph now sit on IR. So we'll have to see if they're able to get anything worked out with those guys in the next coming days. Or obviously, I don't think McNichols and Moultrie, those guys will have to probably stay on IR until they able to pass a physical at this point, and hopefully that's sooner rather than later. But as far as the rest of the moves, man, you kind of wondered about Carl Joseph with the nature of that injury and him leaving after that opening kickoff and having that air cast on his right ankle or whatnot. You kind of wondered about that, but the Anthony Miller thing kind of came out of the blue there, and this is a guy that seemed to be making a push and having a chance at the 53-man roster along with Carl Joseph, and you go into that. It must have happened during the off day, right?
Either late Thursday and it was unreported, or on Friday, because he practiced Thursday and he looked fine to me.
All right. Well, then you turn around and he obviously did not play in the Saturday night game. And then you get, to the start of this week, and now he's on IR there. So it's just the kind of attrition, I guess, that happens that you can expect during training camp and the preseason.
I guess so, but you're right. Both those guys were having nice camps, so that Joseph especially was pushing hard for a roster spot, while Anthony Miller was fighting Miles Boykin for that 6 receiver spot, and so that opens the door for Boykin to really cement that spot. And Miles Killebrew, who's missed a lot of time, I did kind of muse and wonder, is this a guy maybe a surprise cut candidate? His roster odds just increased because Joseph is now unavailable.
Yeah, absolutely, and they didn't have to trim 5, but I'm willing to bet that Miller and Joseph would not be part of that 5 to get down to the 85 number there. So, yeah, onward they go, and you just kind of keep your fingers crossed at this. And they're starting to get a little bit healthy here through the process. So I guess that'd be a perfect time to kind of give the people an injury report as we head into Wednesday's practice.
Well, just real quick, any thoughts on the new offensive lineman? I admit I've not watched anything on Dunkel. I remember he was kind of billed as a big, strong guy coming out of San Diego State and kind of looks the part from what I just saw yesterday. And then McCollum, I just know he has some experience. So Pittsburgh clearly, some lack of satisfaction with their offensive line, all the changes they're making there. Now, there's third-teamers who did not play in the game, but Pittsburgh's offensive line in general, especially in pass protection, did not do a very good job in that opener. I think Pittsburgh's just trying to throw as much at the wall and see what sticks. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I have not watched any of Dunkel, but I did watch them. I have watched a little bit of McCollum there, and big guy obviously comes out of a good program, right? In Texas A&M, I believe they probably know quite a bit about him, right? Because they were down there around that same time looking at a couple guys these last couple years. So they probably knew him very well. He does have NFL starting experience, most of last year with the Lions there. I haven't gone deep into any tape on that, just kind of surface, but a pretty big guy overall. But not as far as size goes and all like that. But I think the key factor here is this late in camp, you kind of insulated yourself, I think, with you're making the bottom of your roster better, I think, with this move for Gilliam over McCollum. But in the same breath, let's face it, McCollum's going to be more of a practice squad candidate, I think. And this also gives you a guy for the last preseason game, because you're going to need some extra bodies there to help get you through that game on top of it there. So we'll see. You never know how some of these bottom of the roster guys go, but I would think more than anything, with just a couple weeks left to go before the start of the season, he's firmly trying to be that backup center potentially on the practice squad.
Sure, I agree. I just think recognition, they want to, I mean, they've really kind of overturned their third string offensive line. You have Gilliam and Owens and Dixon gone. That made up the majority of that group, obviously. And so they just want to, redo that group and see if they can find better options. And I'm guessing McCollum's a bit more of a natural center. Gilliam was a guard at Wake Forest, and he was playing center this year, but, it had some snap issues there. So I think you just want to find someone with more experience, maybe a bit more size, and maybe a bit more of a natural center.
Right.
All right, Dave, let's go over the injury report. Not practicing yesterday at St. Vincent College were wide receiver Calvin Austin with the foot injury. No Montrevious Adams due to the ankle. Alex Highsmith ribs. Derek Watt shoulder. Marcus Allen with that hamstring that's kept him out for the majority of training camp overall. But seeing guys like Watt and Highsmith and Allen start to return in terms of their rehab, Watt seems the closest to come back with that shoulder. Highsmith, Allen did a little bit of jogging yesterday. Calvin Austin, no boot whenever he came down the stairs. He just was in sneakers and walked around fine without a limp. So hopefully that's a good sign. I would not expect him to practice today and probably would not play in the second preseason game. My hope is, and this is just my own idle speculation, but my hope is that he's ready to play in the finale against Detroit a little over a week from now. If he can do that, that's a win in my book. Yeah,
absolutely. And you do have to worry about the whole train leaving the station thing at this point, right? Getting on the moving train at this point for Austin is a little bit concerning. I think we'll see obviously how the depth chart shakes out, whether or not they keep 6 or not and all like that. But it sort of feels like it's trending to potentially Calvin Austin, the 3 starting week 1 on the inactive list, right?
Yeah, if he misses a lot of time, if he cannot play in the preseason finale, it would trend that way. And Miles Boykin would have value as that, last active receiver, the number 5, we could call it, in terms of the special teams impact. So that's on the table right now, but I'm taking it day by day, just seeing when he gets healthy and, just making sure it's not incredibly serious to the point where we're talking IR. If we can avoid that, then I'll take it overall for Calvin Austin.
I think the best thing here, too, is you getting Claypool back on the field, who's had a couple injuries already. That's concerning in and of itself right there. Two different injuries, he said, so far in camp here. But this guy, was trained, has had the Instagram videos and worked with several different people during the offseason there. So you just hope that's just something that's not, sign of something to come here. And then Deontay Johnson's over that hip flexor now, and he's back out there. So, keep your fingers crossed these last couple of practices here. And I think we got a good shot at seeing a good chunk of this offense Saturday night on the road against Jacksonville.
Yeah, I believe, and I do not know this yet, Mike Tomlin should speak later this week and confirm as much, but I believe this weekend's game will be used as the tune-up game as opposed to the final preseason game. So I would expect most of these guys to play. Trubisky obviously will start this one, and I would expect Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris may sit this one out, and I'm totally okay with that, but you should see certainly more of the guys you'll see week 1 playing this Saturday.
All right, and you expect Pickett to be the second quarterback in that game, right?
I'm still not, cemented in that, but that's where I'm leaning right now. He's run as the number 2 quarterback all week. I want to see how today looks as well. If Rudolph goes back to number 2, then I certainly would have more pause in that. But just reading the tea leaves and based off of his play, that would be my suspicion. That would not guarantee he'd be the number 2 to start the season, but they would want to just try to put Pickett in a different situation with a different group and just see overall how he responds. So we'll see. We'll see if Tomlin comments on that by the time the game rolls around. But that's where I'm leaning right now.
All right.
And then from an injury standpoint, guys, returning, some good news overall. They are getting guys back. Miles Boykin came back. Same with Chaz Green. Benny Snell, who missed several days with a knee injury, including the preseason opener. He returned. Master T suffered what Mike Tomlin called a low ankle sprain, got tackled awkwardly on the sideline by Chris Steele, and he limped off and eventually was carted off. And Mike Tomlin said Arthur Millette has a minor hamstring injury, so that may keep him out for a couple of days.
All right, we'll see. We'll see what happens when you get out there and start reporting who's doing what out there.
And we will. All right, Dave, what do you want to go from here? Devin Bush's comments, not the most encouraging thing, and I'm being charitable, I suppose, when I say that, talking with the media for the first time, I believe, yesterday, and just, and I don't want to base too much into just a quick couple of sound bites and a pretty short interview overall, but for a guy that's had an okay camp, but just not where it needs to be, some of the comments certainly made headlines on Twitter.
Absolutely. And I don't know, does it feel like Devin Bush lacks a lot of self-awareness?
Yeah, I think so.
At this point, I mean, this isn't a rookie or a second-year player that we're dealing with now. We've got a large enough selection of sound bites and the full videos and the context to put along with it. This guy just lacks self-awareness, I think.
Yeah, it's so hard for me. I know what most people will say, reading those quotes and listening to the interview about that Bush doesn't care and he's apathetic. And I get that. It's so tough for me to say that about a player, to assume that, what's in his heart and in his mind. But, whenever the comment that stuck out to me, wrote about it this morning for Steelers Depot, he was asked, do you think you'll remain a Steeler, about the 5th-year option and things like that? And he said, I mean, it's a business. I'm still going to be in the NFL, so we'll see. That's not a comment that's going to sit well with a lot of Steelers fans, with the comment of, well, I'll still be in the NFL, not in Pittsburgh, whatever. I mean, there's no guarantee you will be. No one's, you're not entitled to the right to be in the NFL next year. So just that comment did not strike me the right way.
Yeah, let me tell you, if he doesn't start playing better, he's not going to be in the NFL. I mean, he might be on a roster next summer somewhere, but I don't think there's a guarantee that he sticks on the 53 unless he's becomes a great special teams player. And at this point, I'm not even sure you can get that part of him right now out of him right now. This was my talk in my terrible take on Tuesday with him. Obviously, his first preseason game, albeit a preseason game, small sample size, not very encouraging. Look, like the same kind of, the same Devin Bush that we saw last season there. I think it's evident in training camp, correct, that he is in a battle for playing time, right?
Yes, and I would say, just based off what they've done in camp, Robert Spillane has easily outplayed Devin Bush. Now, does that mean Spillane will start? You can debate that, but certainly he still has to fight and cement that spot.
All due respect to Robert Spillane, who, quite honestly, in his past media sessions and all, is the prototypical Steeler. And I've talked about that. I mean, how can you not like Robert Spillane? I mean, other than obviously some of his tape, and I get that. But at least this is a guy that will come downhill and take on blocks and help you against the run. That's obviously his strong point at this point. He doesn't help you as much out in space. He can cover to some degree, but I guess what I'm getting at here is the fact that, once again, all due respect to Robert Spillane, that he is giving Devin Bush all he wants in training camp. That's not great, Bob.
Right. I mean, I don't think Bush has been awful, but you're not seeing the playmaking in camp that you're seeing from Spillane, and Bush should be able to make those plays, being comfortable and, knowledgeable in this system. And then I thought, as you mentioned, the game against Seattle, Bush's performance was pretty poor overall. So I don't know, Dave. I mean, it just feels like any sort of hope you have left, which I know is pretty slim to begin with, is really dwindling here. And, I get that maybe Bush just did not want to talk to the media. I assume he did not want to talk to them, considering he hasn't spoken to them at all during the summer. But just hearing some of those comments there felt like a guy that is maybe going through some of the motions, and that's not going to get the job done in Pittsburgh.
And we've had this conversation about him a few times, and I really wonder if he's playing football for the right reasons. I wonder if he, because of his lineage and all like that, I don't think his heart's in it, Alex. I really don't. I don't think he enjoys the game and the process overall. I think he is where he is, probably because of his rearing and all like that. And it was kind of expected I guess, of him. And I don't think he loves the game. I don't think he has the passion for the game.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know what's in his head and in his heart. I understand why you were saying that, and I thought the interview yesterday may have reinforced that idea. I just go back to, I know this guy worked so hard coming back from that torn ACL to get himself ready for day one at camp. I mean, there's a lot of guys that do not do that, are not able to do that. So it's like, what did this guy work so hard for? Because you're not really seeing it now, not in terms of play, but just in terms of that want to. It just feels like he's in that, it is the word apathetic and that go through the motions kind of thing. And that just is disheartening because this is such a critical year for him. And, we'll see how it goes, but it just feels like, he's not meeting that challenge of trying to turn his career around.
Here's the thing. You remember those long conversations we had about him during pre-draft and the biggest thing that stuck out to me with Devin Bush and I even tweeted, and we had these conversations well before they drafted him, was where was the overall defensive playmaking at? The athleticism was there on the tape, but where the F was the playmaking at, and especially against ranked teams, there's no doubt that there was the things on tape, the whole sideline to sideline athleticism and stuff like that. But where is the playmaking? Where was the playmaking? And I think it's hard to expect, that he wasn't making plays in college to all of a sudden start making plays in the NFL, and he hasn't. And there were the instances quite a bit where he was getting swallowed up with, by the guards at Michigan and all. Now, his athleticism a lot of time allowed him to avoid that stuff, but in the NFL, it's not as easy to do that. I don't see him coming out of this. I think we should all join hands and maybe pray about it, but and hope. Look, he's got to start turning this around right now, and that means Saturday night against Jacksonville. But we have enough tape on him at this point that I will find it absolutely amazing if he starts even playing like a third round pick at this point. It's not there on tape, and you got new coaches, Flores and all in there and all like that. He's got to know he's being pushed for playing time there. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe just
right.
Look, he's guaranteed over $3 million this year. Maybe he knows that too. They can't cut me. I mean, they can cut him, but how bad? Here's the next question for you. A, am I right? Is it going to get any better? B, how bad does it have to be before you cut him? At over $3 million guaranteed, because nobody's going to claim this guy off waivers at $3 million salary, right?
I don't think so. Not with the way things are right now. To the first question, will it get better? I don't really have any hope for that. I mean, obviously you would prefer that, and we'll see what happens, but I just don't know what the optimism is for that right now. In terms of how bad does it have to be for him to get cut, I still wouldn't expect that, but you just wonder, even if he does begin the year as the starter, how long will that stick for? I mean, it feels like, this team likes Robert Spillane while he's not as athletic or in theory as good in coverage as Devin Bush. Devin Bush is not that good in coverage anyway. I mean, He has his host of technical issues and, he's not good in man coverage as he should be for a guy with his, athleticism overall. So it's really not that much of a coverage downgrade, Bush to Spillane, to be honest with you, although Spillane will certainly have his issues as well. So you do wonder at some point if they're going to make the switch, because it feels like, Spillane's the kind of guy that will at least play hard against the run and be downhill and be physical. And for a 32nd ranked run defense last year in an AFC North that certainly can and will run the football, having a guy like Robert Spillane is going to help you in that regard.
Do you even want Devin Bush running down covering kicks?
Yeah, I mean, what a fall from grace that would be.
You think Danny Smith wants him in that room?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's a lot about want-to and, effort. And if that's a question with Devin Bush, then, I mean, Artie Burns became that kind of guy. Then he eventually became an inactive. So are we going Artie Burns 2.0 here. I think Bush will still make the team. You know, Burns did, Jarvis Jones did his final year. But beyond that, you know, the lights really dim for Devin Bush. And even to your point earlier, you're right. He's not made the splash plays, but Bush's issues are a lot more fundamental and foundational than that. I wish that splash plays were the only concern right now, but it's basic stuff like getting off of blocks and making tackles and seeing things cleanly in front of you. You know, when you got running backs that run past you when you're unblocked. I mean, those are the issues I'm talking about with Devin Bush right now. I wish that lack of receptions was the problem.
Right, and if he's not going to be able to improve that part of it, then he's damn sure not going to improve the production.
Right.
Look, I'd kill for 4 tackles a game that are within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. You know.
Yeah.
Not so much tackles for losses and defense passes or anything like that. Just get on the damn stat sheet for because look, you know, the Steelers and their inside linebackers normally, when things are going well, those are the ones that are hunting, chasing the guys with 11, 12, 13 tackles a game. Remember that game, Ryan Shazier? I mean, how many times did that guy just most recently lead the teams in tackles per game? And
sure.
That's when things are going well. And obviously they now hope Miles Jack is the guy that's going to do that. But there's still certain, obviously situations of defensive personnel and down and distance situations that requires 2 inside linebackers on the field. And he's not the best option for them right now.
No, he's not. Miles Jack should and almost certainly will be the 3-down linebacker for this team this year. Again, it's a question to me of, I think Bush will still start the season, but how quickly does Robert Spillane rotate in and then eat into that playing time more and more and more? And I think that's a distinct possibility this year.
Yeah. And once again, would you trade for Bush in that $3 million salary right now?
Would I trade for him? No, I wouldn't touch the guy. No.
Right. So, I mean, and I have to look at his offset language and all like that. But at this point, I wouldn't expect anybody to, even if you waived him, to claim that either.
Yeah, unless there was some team that had a lot of cap space that just really liked him coming out of Michigan. I mean, first-round picks certainly are still attractive, but all I'm focused on is Pittsburgh, and it's not been good enough so far. And what he said yesterday is not going to sit well with Steelers fans, and I totally understand that. Yeah,
it definitely is not going to endear him to Steelers fans, that's for sure. And I mean, I don't know what you do with him at this point. And once again, it's not like, well, just demote him, because backup linebackers have to play special teams, especially backup inside linebackers. And I'm not so sure he's one of the 11 that you have a weak link in there. You could end up with one in the end zone on you, right?
How much he's really never played special teams in Pittsburgh too, because he was the guy. I mean, he's played 130 total special team snaps across 3 years. I mean, he's basically never done that in Pittsburgh because he was the guy, or supposed to be the guy, when he got drafted.
Right. How many did he play the other night? I'm guessing none, right? I forgot.
I'm assuming 0. I mean, I don't imagine he was doing anything there.
Let me look real quick here.
Played 60 last year, 15% of the snaps. Not even sure what unit that would be on.
No special team snaps the other night. So
I think he's probably been on field goal block unit, which is not really coverage or anything like that.
Right. I bet Dave Smith don't even want him in the room.
Yeah. So I mean, I try to give grace. I try to be understanding. And again, I know many people say this guy just doesn't care. He doesn't give a crap. Just cut him. I think he does care, but I think maybe he's just frustrated by how things have gone, and it just maybe a thing where you spiral and you hear all the negativity and that weighs on you. But certainly, Bush saying, yeah, I might not be a Steeler, but I'll be in the NFL, is not a comment that you want to hear for a guy trying to fight for his job in his career.
I mean, I think he cares. I don't think he's all in,
Well, I mean, that's caring. If you care and you're not all in, I mean,
I don't think he is. He's got a new baby. I think he's got I think there's other things in his life that he's a lot more passionate about.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And there's nothing wrong with that, because look, he once again, I think he's one of those coaches' sons. a coach's son story where you're kind of groomed to be this, and then you turn around and you didn't really want to do this anyway.
Right. But I mean, I don't think I know this might be a little controversial. I don't think you have to be passionate about football necessarily to still be a good player. There are guys who have had other interests. I mean, Arian Foster is a good example, a guy that was a very well-rounded person with different interests, and he was a phenomenal running back when he was healthy. So, I mean, Bush has all the talent. It's not like it's not there. Just not making some of those plays.
He's not making any plays.
That's fair.
All right. This is going to sound like a beat up session on him. And I guess in a sense it is, but this isn't new. The people that have had hope, the guys that get after me for some of the things on Twitter. Look, I made that declaration a couple of games in the last season. This ain't going to work with him no more, and I took hell for it. And then a lot of people say, well, let him get past this knee injury. He even said now he's past the knee injury yesterday. So, I mean, at this point, if you're a Steelers fan, I mean, what I'm getting at is I think a lot of people that had hope no longer have hope. But within the same breath, I don't think you have any choice but to kind of root for this kid to maybe magically turn it around, because this franchise does not need first rounders busting. They had one, obviously not too long ago in Artie Burns, and at least Terrell Edmonds is not a full bust. He's giving you something. He's giving you a lot more than Devin Bush, I feel, at this point. But you just don't need these guys busting like that. So, especially final year at $3 million when you can't do anything with him, just an expensive potential inactive later on in the season here. So, I don't know. I'll tell you this. We're going to scrutinize the living what out of that Jacksonville tape with him on the field,
Definitely. I mean, at this point, all I'm looking for is for him to do is the fundamentals, to do your job and just do it well. And if there's no splash, that's fine. I can live with that at this point. There's enough playmakers on this defense that Bush no longer has to be and is not counted on to be that guy. But even just getting the basics down about doing your job and making the tackle, making the play in front of you, we're still not seeing.
Right.
By the way, random here, Minkah Fitzpatrick no longer the NFL's highest paid safety. Derwin James signing a 4-year extension, averaging $19.1 million per year, $42 million guaranteed, $29 million in year one, according to Ian Rappaport. So Minkah Fitzpatrick now the second highest paid safety in the NFL.
Boy, the thing moves fast, right?
Right, but that's why I like Khan. I think teams should always strive to get deals done early, because if you wait, then someone else gets paid, and then you're having to top whoever just got paid. And I think maybe that's hurt Pittsburgh a bit in the past. So you get the Minkah deal done now. Now Derwin tops you as opposed to Minkah needing to top Derwin James. And
look at the Bengals out there now. What?
Right, with Jesse Bates.
Yeah, with Jesse Bates, you're right. Get them to the altar as quickly as you can.
Right. And so I think that all worked out pretty well for Pittsburgh, and Chargers fans, I'm sure, are happy that Derwin James has been locked up long term. All right, Dave, Steelers personnel members, front office members speaking yesterday. Both Andy Weidl and Omar Khan spoke in different arenas, I should say. That was Weidl with a standard Steelers represented press conference, and then Omar Khan on the Pat McAfee Show. Who do you want to start with, Omar or Andy Weidl?
Let's save Omar for last for some of the comments that he made, and there really isn't, I don't think, overall a lot to talk about when it comes to the Andy Weidl press conference. Though it was great to see a large portion of him and then talking Steelers finally. I mean, how long has it been since he's been in that position now? Sort of his, what do you do here, Bob? Well, he's, going to oversee the pro and college scouting side. I think that was pretty evident anyway. He's going to be kind of an extension, if you will, of Omar Khan. I tell you, the nuts and bolts, when you boil it down, just was more about, he mentioned analytics during his presser yesterday, and asked what kind of where does he come in as far as heavy and overall usage of analytics? Where does that play into kind of his background and all? He says, I think if it's applied and you can find a usefulness, it's a tool. He says it's not the end all be all, but there's things that you can find in it that could be helpful, just little things here and there. He says, I think the key is to find and apply. He says there's so much data. There are so many stats right now. He says you can get inundated with it. And I think it's a key to find the important things, find the important data, how you can apply it to what your program and what's important to your team and your program there. So I think that's kind of the money takeaway from what he had to say during his press conference all. And, the thing is I think to some degree, this team, look, we can identify or have been able to identify a large kind of, or whittle down to a pretty decent, manageable group of players that we think this team is interested in during the draft cycle, right?
Right. I mean, the question is just how much does that change under Khan's regime, and then a total outsider in Andy Weidl? How much does that change their philosophy remains to be seen.
How about instead of looking at 40 times sometimes and sparkiness and RAS scores and all like that, how about we start looking at maybe some production at the college level there? It is a mix. And I think you can look, I love all these new analytics. You know me, you give me certain, I've got hot stats now that are my go-tos that I would go to the cross carrying at this point. But within that, though, the tape still trumps everything, right?
Sure. And I think Pittsburgh's still going to, as long as Mike Tomlin is there, there's still going to be a team that's going kind of off of gut and tape and just who the man is and the character of it all. And that won't change, I don't think, even under Khan and Weidl. But you're going to see a shift there. Colbert was about as old school could get in terms of analytics and numbers and things like that. And Andy Weidl is certainly more new age, and Omar Khan is as well. So how does that look? How does that change things? I'm not quite sure, but we'll keep an eye on it and identify those changes and trends along the way.
We agree they need to use more analytics than what they've done.
I mean, that's what it generally sounds like. Obviously, we don't know exactly how they were using it before, but just based on the tea leaves and their staff, although they did not hire any new analytics people, at least no one that's listed on the Steelers website. So they did not bring in more people to that room that I'm aware of, which is
right.
Maybe a little surprising there. But just based on what we knew and have kind of heard, not that we know exactly how they've used analytics, we expect to have a heavier emphasis, not maybe on pulling the numbers, but the emphasis and the value on those numbers. I felt like Pittsburgh had them, but Colbert, did it more begrudgingly. And I think Khan and Weidl will be more open in using that as part of the evaluation process.
Right. Hearts and smarts is great and all, but there's another level to it there.
Right. So, yeah, from Weidl, I'm just reading some of the comments we wrote about. It feels pretty standard, pretty boilerplate. He talks about, mental toughness, and I wrote about that during the offseason when I kind of did a deep dive into who Andy Weidl is and his influences and the things he looks for. So he wants mentally tough players. How do we evaluate that is probably going to be difficult to do, but I know that's something that he really prioritizes.
He seemed real even keeled yesterday, and that's I think respectable.
Yeah, he's a guy that's been around a lot of good people over his time. Obviously, he worked in Pittsburgh, and so he got to know Bill Nunn. And when he worked as the Steelers intern in the late 90s, he's worked with the Harbaughs before, Ozzie Newsome. So, I mean, he's really had some good teachers to help him out.
Right. He's had some exposure to some pretty respectable people in organizations here today.
Right. So good to hear from him, and I'm sure we will not hear from him for several more months.
Right.
There you go.
All right, Omar Khan time.
Yeah, the big thing that Omar Khan said, it was a fun interview on the Pat McAfee Show. It always is on that show. They do a great job. But the biggest thing was basically flat out asked, not flat, it was implied, but basically asked.
Everybody knew.
Yeah, would you consider trading Mason Rudolph? And let me actually pull up the exact quote that Omar Khan, and I just lost it here, so give me a second to pull it up here. But basically, Omar Khan saying that he is not anticipating trading Mason Rudolph. He said, I'd be surprised if anything happens down that path. Whenever asked about the potential of trading a quarterback, says, quote, you take calls, but I'll be honest with you. We don't have any intention of trading any of those guys. We really like them. There's some decisions to be made, but I'd be surprised if anything happens down that path, end quote. So based off of that, obviously Omar Khan's not going to come out and say, yeah, we're considering it. And he's not that stupid. They're not going to, fall into that trap. But based off of that, the idea of trading Rudolph seems less than likely at this point.
All right. Now, several people, depending on what their narrative might have been going into this, would tell you to address these quotes obviously different ways. Some will tell you, well, what else was he going to say in this? And him phrasing it the way he phrased it ups the value of Mason Rudolph and basically says, don't come to us unless you bring a package that turns our head, because right now we have no intentions of, posturing, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I'm sure that there's an element of him doing that in that answer.
But to its core, and knowing that there's two sides to every coin and the posturing and all like that, my takeaway of it is I sort of believe him, but within that, I believe that right now there are no intentions of trading Mason Rudolph. However, everything has its price.
Right. Rudolph is not untouchable. And I've been in the camp of, I think Rudolph stays for a long time, but you never know. You don't want to definitively say that that's not going to happen, because you never know what offer may come your way. And as Omar says, you at least answer the phone and see what the other side has to offer and go from there.
Within all that, though, and before we get to, we both did our latest roster predictions and all like that. I don't know, Alex, and I've felt this way since draft day. There is a part of me that still has that really feels like they're going to deal Mason for some reason.
Based on what?
Just a gut feeling on it. It feels like they're going. I don't know. It just has felt all along that they're going to trade him.
Yeah, I have not gotten that same sense. Maybe initially when they, signed Trubisky and draft Pickett, but I think they go back to 2019 when they traded Josh Dobbs, and then Ben goes down 10 days later, and they're in a really tough spot the rest of the way. I think they want to have a really strong, competitive quarterback room. They like the tenure that Mason Rudolph brings, and unless the team's going to offer something fairly substantial, even knowing that Rudolph's gone after this year, do you want to take the risk of 2019 for a 6th or 7th round pick? I think it would have to be at least a 5th, and I don't know if a team's going to offer a 5th for Mason Rudolph right now.
And what have I said all along? A 5th.
A 5th. Yeah.
Fifth or better.
Right.
I don't think it's, and yeah, here's the thing. You do get to dump $3 million worth of salary that way. But once again, the player worth, the depth chart spot, in the experience versus, in other words, to make it worth the Steelers' while and all this, it does feel like it would need to be a 5th or higher.
Now, if Kenny Pickett does become the number 2, then that, I think, increases the possibility, obviously, that Rudolph would get traded. If Rudolph's the backup, he's not going to get traded. If they feel like he's the better option than Pickett, he's going to stay. The only possibilities if Pickett beats him out and now Rudolph's number 3, the weekly inactive, and you say, okay, well, he's not going to be next man up if something were to happen, so maybe we'll consider it.
All right, yeah, and then at the same time, Mason's not going to be happy being the third. Period. I mean, he's not. Right. He's going to say, "Guys, why don't you get me the hell out of here?" With all due respect, I see what you got going on here, and that's fine. But man, let me go get a chance to compete somewhere else.
Right. So that
at some point that would come to the surface. I feel throughout the season.
Right. Mason probably wouldn't even have to explicitly say it. That would be the feeling. Pittsburgh would be pretty dumb if they didn't feel like Rudolph wasn't happy with all these chances. Finally, Ben retires, and then Rudolph goes backwards somehow as soon as
Right.
Penn retires from number 2 to number 3. So understood there. So I'm not going to say that it won't happen, but I don't think Pittsburgh. My thought is Pittsburgh will not be calling up teams saying, "Hey, we have Mason. Who wants him?" They'll take calls about Mason, but they won't be the one dialing the number.
Exactly, and I think I don't know how contrived his interview on McAfee was, but he was also asked about you're kind of you're the new kid on the block, even though Omar's not a new kid on the block, but new kid in that position that he's in. He's had some fantasy football trade offers. It sounds like, hey, yep. This is a good deal for you, buddy. Trust me on this. And in so many words, Omar said that during the interview there that, yeah, he's been tested already. And maybe that's part of him responding back to those kind of tests is saying, yeah, I would be surprised if we trade Mason. Look, it's a lot easier to look at these things 3 weeks after they happen.
If only we had that luxury today. Yeah,
right.
We're a lot smarter 3 weeks from now.
Right. I mean, if we get 3 weeks from today and Mason was traded for a fifth or greater, we're going to say, see, why didn't we see it all along type of thing. So it does feel to some degree that there was some posturing in that, but I feel at its core, I wanted to believe Omar in him saying that we really don't have any plans of trading him.
Right. I mean, again, I think teams would have to call, and teams may call, but how many teams will call and what will they offer, and will that be enough? That's a lot that has to come together for that trade to happen. So I don't want to say that it can't happen, but I put it, well below 50% right now, just because all those things would have to come together for a Rudolph deal to take place.
And look, things happen. Quarterbacks go down. We still got a couple more weeks in. There might be a situation around the league where a team says, look, we need a quarterback with experience that can throw the football down the field. And, you start going down a list and not too many times, you're going to get to Mason's name pretty quick.
Yeah, I think, and if Rudolph continues to play well in the preseason, the way that he did against Seattle, that's going to obviously, help things whenever it comes to your pro personnel department and their scouting and they're putting together lists and things like that. I do want to mention something I wrote last week, and it was more speculation, just kind of the dot connecting I like to do. But if you do want to talk about one team that Mason Rudolph would be a fit for, I think it's the LA Rams. I think that would be a really strong fit there overall. Matthew Stafford's dealing with an elbow injury, some weird, rare tendonitis thing that Sean McVay didn't seem to be terribly concerned about, but admitted that this is kind of more of a pitcher injury, and Stafford's got a lot of miles on him. The backup, John Wolford, has thrown all but 42 career passes. And most importantly, the Rams' assistant quarterbacks coach is Zach Robinson, who played at Oklahoma State. And then, as you found out, Dave, this was a good find by you, trained Mason Rudolph during the pre-draft process. They roomed together. And so those two guys know each other extremely well. And so I got some pushback from Rams fans saying that the Rams really like John Wolford, and I'm not really sure what they're basing that off of, but that's the pushback that I got there. But I think from a dot connecting standpoint, from a need standpoint, the Rams, of course, are a team more than willing to trade their draft picks. Rudolph to LA would make a lot of sense. From
all of the speculation that has happened regarding, I mean, you name it, it's out there. Lions, it seems to be the latest thing that, and all it is speculation. And let's be clear, all yours is speculation as well here. But quite honestly, when you look at everything in its current state around the league right now, and also too, the Rams don't give a crap about draft picks. Doesn't seem right.
It's that let's need F them picks meme, which is a literal meme about the Rams right now.
Right, F them picks. And I mean, if you read, I don't know how many people have actually have read that article. If you haven't, you shouldn't. It's really well theorized by Alex. It is the the best dot connector yet. And once again, it is mere speculation. And then plus two, Tomlin and McVay have not that it matters all, but those two communicate,
Right. I mean, I imagine any deal would be done between Snead and Khan, but it doesn't hurt that there's trust there between Tomlin and McVay.
Right. What do they like so much about their backup over there in Wolford?
They like him enough. They have not played him the last 2 preseasons. He will not play this preseason. He did not play last preseason as protection. So they've been working the 3rd and 4th string guys. I'm not sure what it is, because the guy, again, has 42 career passes, did not play in the preseason last year, did not play in the 2020 preseason because there was no preseason. So I guess he looks great in practice, because that's basically the only time this guy's throwing the football.
All right, I think I'm willing to bet people are thrilled that we're spending a pretty decent portion of this podcast talking about Mason Rudolph. But I want to end with this portion of it coming out of that first preseason game. Now at this point, where Mason's stock. What I'm getting at now is what's on tape right now at this point. Is it good right now to leave it at that? Based on, where he's at in his career, I don't think you gain anything overall playing Mason much more in the preseason unless you're firmly convinced that he is going to be your number 2 throughout the entire season and be the next guy up. But in the same breath, though, you still got to get Mitch some snaps, and you want to get. Obviously Kenny Pickett some snaps too. And we're back to that conversation that we had before even preseason open. How much is Mason going to play, and how much do you have to see from him? And to me at this point right now, it feels like, and that, that throw, let's face it, that throw to George Pickens was money, man. I mean, and yeah, he did have some other, I'd like to have those throws back in that game. But I guess what I'm getting at now is I don't think his value has been any higher at this point, especially if you think that you might want to trade him. Right.
I mean, you can see less of Rudolph and be okay with that. I mean, but I think they've given all those guys chances and opportunities, even playing 3 quarterbacks against Seattle. I think you got a good feel for all 3 guys. I mean, Trubisky didn't play a lot, but they were 2 solid drives. Rudolph, got the rest of the half, and then Pickett the entire second half. I think in this game, I'd be fine with seeing Rudolph less. You want to see Trubisky, in the tune-up game, and then a lot more Kenny Pickett to see if he can be the number 2. And then in the finale, Trubisky probably won't play at all, and then you just basically give Rudolph a half and Pickett a half. And so I think you can still play Rudolph and still evaluate the other quarterbacks the rest of the summer.
Okay. I will go back to what I said kind of at the start of this. My gut, for some reason, has told me from the get-go they're going to deal him. I don't know why, but that's been my sense. We'll see. We got a couple more weeks left.
Fair enough. We will see. All right, Dave, speaking of your roster predictions and if Mason Rudolph will be on the roster, both of us have come out with our latest updated roster predictions, the first one since the start of training camp. Do you want to go one by one, or do like my groups versus your groups, or how do you want to divvy up comparing our roster predictions?
No, let's just kind of tag team through this and the groupings and all. You name off yours and I'll name off mine.
All right. I'll start quarterbacks here. I have 3 of them: Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and Mason Rudolph.
I do as well too. But once again, I will not be shocked whatsoever if they trade Mason Rudolph. I just have to go off what is there right now, and what is there right now is those 3 quarterbacks, and that's what I have to work with.
At running back, keeping 3, Najee Harris, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, and fullback Derek Watt.
Okay.
Our first difference comes here.
I believe, hold on a minute. I can't even.
I can read off yours. You have Najee Harris, Benny Snell, Jalen Warren, and Derek Watt. So you have Warren over McFarland.
Yeah, I got to see a little bit more from McFarland. I mean, it was a great showing the other night and all like that. The way they're treating Jalen Warren with carrying the football around the camp and all like that, I don't know. It feels like they kind of like this kid. And I guess
they do.
The question becomes is if they feel Warren and Benny Snell Jr. are interchangeable.
Yeah, I mean, Warren is displaying Snell-like special teams value. Has he been as effective as Snell? I mean, it's only been 1 game, but obviously not there yet. I mean, they like Warren for sure, and I understand that he's flashed, and I get what you're saying. If they care enough about him to try to really focus on the fumbling issues, they really want him to stop that so he can be an effective player and make this roster. But he is fumbling as well, and McFarland has not. So I'm still giving McFarland the slight edge, but Warren, even with Snell coming back, he's still getting getting some first team reps. And so, as long as he takes care of the football the rest of the way, then he may find himself on the roster.
True or false? Mike Tomlin still very much loves Benny Snell football.
True. That's forever going to be true. It's an evergreen statement.
All right. So how does he fall out of love with Benny Snell football?
That's a good question. I mean, at some point,
Jaylen Warren football.
Jaylen Warren football. Yeah, essentially. If you want to have that kind of thought, could they keep 4 running backs again? They've done it before.
I don't think it's impossible.
With Harris, Snell, McFarland, and Jaylen Warren.
I mean, if you did trade Mason Rudolph, are you going to use a roster spot for Chris Oladokun?
I doubt it. They shouldn't.
There's your spot right there.
Yeah, and you could go 8 offensive linemen. I mean, you have some things to play with. Who knows what happens at wide receiver? Other injuries that may open something up. Maybe even only 4 inside linebackers. I mean, you could probably find room for it if you really had to or wanted to.
Look, we've talked about the backup running back position all offseason. So it's going to be contested, and there are a lot of people that want Benny Snell Jr. out of Pittsburgh. I get it. But you better have a better option and not just a guy on the field on offense side of the people do not realize the root of why Mike Tomlin likes Benny Snell so much.
Right, which is to a large extent the special teams value of it, but just more that known quantity, I suppose. But really what Snell does on special teams is valuable, and it's not impossible to replace, but you do have to find a guy who can replace that. And one of these running backs will have to be a Snell-like special teamer to make this team.
And let's face it here, Anthony McFarland, I mean, last Saturday night was kind of his, I mean, that's all we have to hold on to right now at this point with him, right?
Right, but at the same token, Jaylen Warren, that's all we have. I mean, in terms of where they're at right now.
Sure, but he's a rookie, and McFarland is taking us to this point to get that one game out of McFarland.
Right, but all that matters is where you're at right now. When the decision is being made, where are you at? And McFarland's had his best camp, and he's gotten a ton of reps, and he's a good fit for Matt Canada's system. He's working in some pony looks and impressed as a receiver. He's not going to offer the potential special teams value that a Warren may and that what Snell is able to do. McFarland's kind of a kick return guy, and that's about it. But if you're a number 2 and more of a defined runner with that number 3 being the special teamer, that can work on the step chart.
Here's the thing. If Anthony McFarland makes this team, he's got to make this team and be used.
Sure. I mean, but by that token, Jaylen Warren, I suppose, the same thing.
Right. But, all right, of these 4 running backs, who is most likely to give you a 50-yard run?
McFarland.
Right. I mean, that's what you kind of hope for if you get to the point where you're keeping him. And obviously he's not on this 53 of mine right here, but that's the kind of thing. If he makes this team, if McFarland winds up making this team, that's the thing that we better see during the season a handful of times.
Well, I mean, that would be nice, but I just want a well-defined runner as at number 2, someone that's going to, be a good running back. And you don't have to be a good special teamer to be the number 2, Snell or whoever could be the number 3 and do that job. But just be someone that if Harris needs a breather, that you're just, staying on schedule. And yeah, you would like the big run, but I don't think that's what you have to have overall. I think to the final point, keeping 4 running backs, not impossible, as you said, but if you're keeping 4 running backs and Najee Harris is still going to play 70+% of the time, you get a lot of guys that aren't doing a whole lot for you. So do you want to go extra heavy at running back when you don't have, or when you do have a defined bell cow? That may not make the most amount of sense. Sure.
Look, I'm still open to McFarland making the roster. I just didn't have him on this roster.
Right. And I'm the same with Warren. I think it's certainly possible. I'm going to keep an eye on it going forward. What I've seen this week for Warren getting a lot of first team reps, running ahead of Benny Snell yesterday was encouraging and intriguing. So this is still up in the air. None of those guys have maybe locked in their spot. Snell is the closest, but could I see a scenario in which Jaylen Warren has a really good camp and does well on special teams and could potentially push Snell off the roster and McFarland makes it? That's possible. So this thing's still open.
Here's the thing that the only thing people are hearing while listening to this is you both have Benny Snell.
Yeah, people really do not like Benny Snell.
They don't. All right. And we both have Derek Watt, obviously. Wide receivers.
Wide receiver, I'm keeping 6, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Miles Boykin, and Gunnar Olszewski.
Same. And there's
All right.
really at this point right now, especially with the Anthony Miller injury at this point, I don't see any arguments outside of that unless you kept less or fewer.
Right. It's either keep 5 or keep those 6. And if you keep 6, then who's the inactive? Is it Calvin Austin? Is it Miles Boykin? Those are your 2 choices at this point.
Right. So pretty cut and dry there. And I think we're the same on the tight ends too, right?
Right. Freiermuth, Gentry, and Connor Hayward. And that seems pretty set in stone right now.
All right. Offensive linemen, they sort of are making it easy for us, I think, and cut themselves during this process here. I have 8, and it's just because I couldn't bring myself to put a 9th on there. Chikwamo Okorafor, Dan Moore Jr., James Daniels, Mason Cole, Kevin Dodson, Kendrick Green, Joe Haig, and J.C. Hassenauer. I believe whether and barring injury, whether they keep 8 or 9, these 8 will be included.
Yep, I'm the same 8. I kept just 8 more. Okorafor, Haig, Dodson, Daniels, Green, Cole, and Hassenauer. The 9th would be John LeGlue. I think he was my number 54 guy on my prediction.
They really need to consider adding from the outside here. I feel if they can find a guy, maybe get one back in a trip, whatever. This is one of the positions that I feel they could use some depth at still.
Where is most urgent? Is it tackle?
I think it's tackle. And all due respect to Joe Haig, and Joe Haig is far and away the best backup tackle they have on this roster right now. But I don't think it's good enough, personally.
Yeah, I hear that. I think I might have more concerns at guard with Green. We'll talk about that later. I mean, obviously Haig is who he is, but I think there's some value in. Can you find a guy that plays both tackle spots and has a lot of experience and, is a decent run blocker and you trust on the waiver wire? Maybe, but I think it's asking a lot.
Here's the thing. If Dodson ends up being your guy, and God hope he is, personally, my apologies to the Kendrick Green fan club. If Dodson's the guy and Green can no longer play center for you, I guess the question is at what point does Kendrick Green, do you just make the decision that it's okay to cut and run from Kendrick Green entirely? Or at least be on your practice squad,
I mean, it wouldn't be unthinkable for a 3rd round. Well, how many 3rd round picks have been cut in their 2nd year in Pittsburgh? I have to go back to my Kevin Colbert study. I mean, obviously it's not many, but Craig Urbick, did he make it 2 years? I'd have to check. I mean, the history, they're not beholden to that history anyway, especially under a new regime. But or does Green just become inactive in that 9th offensive lineman? I think that's maybe a bit more plausible if they were to add somebody.
I suppose, yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at, but we'll see. I mean, he's still, there's still no starter declared at left guard. So before we talk about Kendrick Green, we have to see who becomes starting left guard there, because it will be one of Kevin Dodson or Kendrick Green.
Okay.
And I think it'll be Dodson, but we'll see.
They need to add somebody from the outside, I think, regardless. And I think there's a possibility they will. We'll see.
Okay. Defensive line, I'm keeping 7. Cam Hayward, Chris Wormley, Isaiah Loudermilk, DeMarvin Leal, Larry Ogunjobi, Tyson Alualu, and Montravius Adams.
Would you like to join it? Would you like to welcome me to the 7 club?
Oh, you in 6 last time.
I believe so. Yeah. Remember, I had Montravius Adams off.
Oh, okay. All right. So now you're welcome to the 7 club.
Right. And I have the same 7. And I don't see, if these guys stay healthy, I don't see any way around it, to be honest with you.
Outside linebackers keeping 4 and TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Jannard Avery, and Derek Tuska.
I have the same 4, but I don't. Obviously, I like the starters, but man, I want something else there.
At least when you get eyes on Avery, can it be that number 3? I think you kind of watch that the rest of the summer and hope that Avery can be that number 3 and Tuska being that number 4 and multi-phase special teamer.
All right, I will keep my fingers crossed that that's a position that they're able to add to, but we'll see.
Inside linebacker, I have 5: Miles Jack, Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, Marcus Allen, and Mark Robinson.
I have a difference here. I have the Buddy Robinson instead of Marcus Allen starting to scare me. And look, How good a up back is he?
That's fair. It's a good point.
That's what it came down to me, because he's just an also ran as an inside linebacker. And how good is he as an up back? Is he a guy that Danny Smith's banging the table for over, say, Buddy Johnson? And I'm not convinced that it's that. Now, up back is a very important position, but I look at what he gives you as a backup inside linebacker, the likelihood that he would even see the field in those situations. I cut and ran from him. And then a hamstring injury is obviously not helping him throughout this process.
Right. He's missed a ton of time. I get that. I mean, obviously, Allen is not just an up back. He's a multi-phase, four-phase special teams kind of guy. The question I have to respond to you is, who's banging the table for Marcus Allen? Who's banging the table for Buddy Johnson right now?
True.
What guy in that room is doing that?
But I think Buddy, we still, I mean, we went into this preseason not knowing a lot about Buddy Johnson, so I'll be better equipped to answer that, hopefully, if he stays on the field in these next two preseason games. I'm hoping he shows his worth on special teams and pops a ball out or something like that.
Right. I mean, I know Johnson, I think, has flashed a little bit and maybe been a little bit better, but, is it to the point where, he's done enough to make the team, cement that spot? I'm not quite there. And I know Allen's missed a lot of time with a hamstring injury, but he's going to be back here. He'll be ready for week 1. And so he's a more known guy, and it's not like it's going to linger into the regular season. So I think there's a little more leeway I can give there.
Is he worth what you're paying him too?
Yeah, it's a good question.
There's $2.54 million there.
Yeah, but, this team is not hurting for cap space. Keep the best guys and figure out the rest.
All right. I think that you would not be shocked that Marcus Allen's off the roster, though, right?
No, I'm not going to argue with you too much. I get why you're doing it. I mean, I understand. But the question is, are there guys to take his spots that are really worthy of taking his spots?
All right. I think the other, and I believe it's 10 spots in total, as Mike Tomlin said, or at least 10 on defense that we need to talk about here. I think, as Mike Tomlin likes to say, is this has revealed itself to us.
Oh, is that what he said? Or are you just saying
No. I just in general,
okay. With the injuries to Carl Joseph.
That, and you talking about Justin Lane and all like that. I think I had my first one. I had Justin Lane on there. I have now replaced Justin Lane with James Pierre.
Same. I think we have the same 10 DBs at corner: Cam Sutton, Kelly Witherspoon, Levi Wallace, James Pierre, Arthur Millette. At safety, Micah Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds, Trey Norwood, Miles Killebrew, and DeMonte Casey. Some of those safeties are interchangeable at slot corner. I've had a lot of changes there, putting Casey on, putting Pierre on, putting Millette on, and keeping Killebrew. Had Carl Joseph stayed healthy, I would have been very tempted to put Carl Joseph there, but that decision was, as you said, decided for me.
And it revealed itself to you.
Or revealed itself. Okay. Fair.
We have the same specialist, I imagine.
Yes, Boswell, Harvin, and Kuntz.
All right. My new guys this time around are Jalen Warren, Montravius Adams, Mark Robinson, and James Pierre.
Okay. Mine are, I think I kept the same running backs. I had McFarland on my pre-training camp edition. So my new ones are, let's see here. Mark Robinson, Pierre, Millette, and Casey. So most of the changes coming in the secondary for me.
All right. And practice squad. I have Oladokin, Kevin Radar, Trent Scott, God help me, Anthony McFarland Jr., John LeGlue, Cody White, Tyler Vaughns. Sound like Vaughns dropped some passes yesterday, did he?
Mm-hmm. At least 2, arguably 3.
Chris Owens, who is now on waivers, Hamilcar Rashid Jr., Marcus Allen, Delonte Scott, Khalil, both the Davis twins, Chris Steele, Donovan Steiner, and Justin Lane. I think, as has usually been the case, though, 1 or 2 on a practice squad usually comes from outside of the organization, but I didn't want to go speculating that far out. And I have a feeling I'll nail about, 7, 8 of these probably practice squad guys of the 16 that I listed.
I will say, if you're cutting Justin Lane, just cut him. Just let him go. I wouldn't keep him. Marcus Allen even might be, you could keep him around, but I think he would just say, I want to go somewhere else at this point. But my 16, Oladokin, Jalen Warren, Master Teague. That was before he got hurt, but we'll see how severe that ankle injury is. Kevin Rader, Steven Sims, Anthony Miller. That was pre-shoulder injury. John LeGlue, Trent Scott, Carlos Davis, Khalil Davis, Delonte Scott, Rondell Carter, Buddy Johnson, Carlin Splatel, Chris Steele, and Donovan Steiner. Could definitely see this team add a corner to the practice squad outside the organization. I don't love the cornerbacks on that list.
I think the biggest pushback that I have from my special teams list is people saying, where's Steven Sims?
Oh, is he not on your practice squad?
No. Is he on yours?
Yes, but what was the reason for not putting him on the practice squad?
It was one subset of games. I'm not. Who knows? Maybe he's the type of guy that ends up on another team too. Maybe he's a guy that does just enough during the preseason, then ends up being a fifth or a sixth on another team.
Yeah, that's true. I just think if he is available to be a guy that can do kicks and punts, if something happened to Gunner, because there aren't really a lot of other guys that can do kicks and punts. McFarland can do just kicks, not punts, et cetera, et cetera. So having that is nice to call him up if you need him.
All right, we'll see what happens in this next preseason game, and we will be back talking about another roster prediction next week.
Yep. All right, Dave, some quick thoughts on the All-22. I admit I've worked through the entire offense. I've worked through about half the defense and very little bit on special teams just because I've been at camp and having to do camp-related stuff. Haven't gotten to get into the tape as quickly. I'll finish the defense tonight, but what are some of your overall thoughts with more time to watch the All-22?
Offensive pass protection.
And I assume that's not a good thing.
Correct. And look, we've said this team's going to have to be able to run the football successfully, and a lot in order for this team to have a chance in 2022. I think they have made at least strides in that. We haven't even seen Kevin. Hopefully Kevin Dodson makes it even better in there. And hopefully Kevin Dodson also makes this a better pass protecting team if he can win this spot. And hopefully James Daniels snaps out of whatever is eating James Daniels right now. And what's eating James Daniels right now are defensive linemen.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be in. And hopefully it's just from some of the newness, new team, new city, new coach, new scheme, new terminology, whatever the case is, because my terrible take today is on, James Daniels. And the one guy I was hoping to not worry about this year was James Daniels. And now I'm sitting here today, August 17th, worrying about James Daniels. And that's an uncomfortable place to be.
I went back, looked more specifically at some offensive scheming. It was all vanilla. And look, props on them. I think that one of my biggest takeaways from the first game was what a good job they did in putting these quarterbacks in positions with the play calling to help them be successful. And I didn't see anything that jumped out to me offensively scheme wise, and it shouldn't in the first preseason game. They maybe go, oh wow, look, look what they did here. I just think you're able to do a few more things, especially with some of these boots and all like that. I don't think that a lot of that stuff's going to be revealed to us until we get into the season here.
Right. There's a lot of stuff they're doing at camp that they're not doing inside a stadium, which is a lot more interesting, like their 4x1 quad, quarterback draw play that they ran in 7 shots yesterday. You doubt you're going to see that in a game this Saturday, but it's in the playbook for sure. What you saw against Seattle was basic stuff, basic install type of things, the nuts and bolts of their offense. Offensive line. I wrote a big article today on Pat Meyer and some of the new things he's teaching the offensive linemen and how that looks on tape. We covered that during the offseason, basically his whole philosophy on pass protection, and now we get to watch that in Pittsburgh and different sets, more aggressive sets, setting flatter, independent hands, hop steps to defend bull rushes, flashing dead hands, things like that. And so cover that quite a bit and some of the pros and cons and just what I'm seeing one game through.
All right. But the backup defense, that defensive line pushed around quite a bit, more than I thought they would have been. I found myself wanting more from Buddy Johnson and Mark Robinson overall in that game. The thing I thought one of the great things that you had in the film room yesterday was, and hopefully people have read it, the DeMonte Casey film room I thought was very enlightening. It was more than just that one play on the tight end, and it gives you, I think if you watch the game and if you read and look at the film room, it gives you a lot more comfort in a guy like DeMonte Casey.
Yeah, I thought he played well. He was physical, threw his weight around, was a solid tackler. Now, I mentioned on yesterday's special edition of the podcast, I got pushback from Cowboys fans saying he misses too many tackles, and so we'll see how it looks in the regular season. I don't know if that was last year because he had torn Achilles and was trying to come off of that and wasn't 100% and feeling like himself, but he's done well all summer in that regard. Now, he's a smaller guy, and he shoots a bit low, and so maybe that will cause him to miss a couple tackles, but he's a really physical guy. The 1-2 is there, and all four of his tackles, to me, against Seattle were pretty forceful and impactful.
Right.
I thought with Kenny Pickett, watching him with the All-22 benefit, I think it was still a good outing overall. I do think, well, I noted his snap-to-throw times were really quick, and that was encouraging to see overall, just specifically on some RPOs and quick out routes and things like that. I want to see him speed up just a tick. There's just a couple times that I was watching where he's just a little bit late throwing the ball to a receiver who's maybe coming out of his break when it should be just a hair early. The throw to Vaughns was excellent. That was on time with really good anticipation. I want to see that more often. There were some throws earlier in the game, just some of the speed outs and bubble type stuff where it just felt a tad bit slow. And so just kind of nitpicking Kenny Pickett for a moment. I think he needs to sell his fakes a bit better and work on just speeding up some of the quick game stuff just a literal tick sooner.
I put it all in one mason jar with him. That's a hell of a pun there.
Yeah. Ixnay on the Mason A.
I liked what they did with him overall, and I like how he responded to them setting him up to succeed. I liked his accuracy. I think it was too early to go kind of next level into him on that. That's going to happen. I think in this second preseason game, at least the way it looks like it's shaping up, is that he's going to get the playing time after Mitch leaves, and then a whole 2-minute offense, maybe to end the half and all. One of the things I'm looking for in this game is maybe pushing the football down the field a little bit more and making some of those connections a little bit further down the field. I think this is baby steps with him, and what I think they were looking for him to do in that first preseason game, he did. He passed the test, and that's the way I grade that. He passed the test with flying colors.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about that. I thought he did an excellent job, and I'm really happy with it overall. I always just look at what's next. What's the next thing to do? What's the next level to improve and pushing the ball downfield.
You want to see him push the ball too, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. I think it was, basically nothing past 15 yards, and that was fine. I wanted to see foundational stuff, baseline things, the core tenets of quarterback play. He generally did all of those things and did them really well. But just in the way you're talking about, let's push the ball downfield as a what's next, for me, just a little bit quicker on some of the quick game stuff is another what's next for me.
I mean, the escapability. Look, we've talked in the NFL. You don't have to be Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen kind of extend the plays, but there are times during games where you have to extend plays, get out of sacks, whatnot, and he did that a couple of times in the game. So I like that aspect of it as well too.
One guy who struggled probably more than anybody else, and I know Josh Carney mentioned this in our Twitter DMs, Chaz Green was a wreck. I don't know what they're doing with Chaz Green. That's a guy that just should not, again, God help us if he sees the field at all during the regular season.
Yeah, I worry about the pass protection. I am really one player I am super excited to maybe see, and hopefully he stays healthy, to play Saturday's Kevin Dodson. That's Same. One guy that I am really going to be, I think, zeroed in on if he plays Saturday night against Jacksonville.
Because I wrote that article on Pat Meyer, I really paid a lot of extra attention to the offensive line. I thought Mason Cole was really good in this game, and I thought he had a good game just kind of watching it casually, but then really going through the All-22 all specifically. John LeGlue was excellent. He was this team's best offensive lineman. I mean, you were on the money about that. There was one rep where he lost. He got over aggressive. I think Meyer's system kind of lends itself to losing against some more finesse and spin moves and things like that. But John LeGlue was on it consistently against Seattle.
But in context here, we didn't need John LeClue to come out of that game as the best offensive lineman.
Right. I'd love to say that James Daniels or Dan Moore were just the guys, but the best offensive lineman on Saturday to me was Mason Cole and John LeClue.
And Joe Haig was it's Joe Haig and then everybody else as far as and the gap's not even close as far as swing tackle goes.
Right. And so that's all well and good, but you don't want your leaders in the clubhouse to be John LeClue and Joe Haig.
The fact that Chaz Green is now at guard tells you a lot too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's played tackle. Did he play any tackle in the game? No, he didn't, right? It was Scott and Haig. But, I mean, he's played some tackle in camp, but he shouldn't play anywhere. Yeah.
The writing's on the wall there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Trent Scott could make the practice squad just because Pat Meyer has always coached him, but that's the extent of it there with Trent Scott. All right, Dave, let's get to reader emails and close out today's show.
Let us do that. And we shall start with, let me sort them out here real quick for you. Fantasy football, Najee Harris. Hello, love the site and the podcast. We can safely assume that Najee will get the majority of the third down running back touches this season. But in your opinion, do you think Najee will also get all the goal line touches, or will Tomlin get cute and bring in Benny Snell football or Jalen Warren for short yardage work? From Tim. From that aspect, why wouldn't you have Najee Harris in the game in the most critical portion of the field?
Agreed. They're not going to get cute with it. The only thing is maybe at the end of a long drive, like you might get where Harris needs a breather, you may bring in fresh legs. So that may naturally kind of put Snell or Warren or whoever into the game. But if he's got, air in his lungs and he's good, and he's not breathing too heavily, then Harris is going to be this team's goal line back.
From Daniel RC writes in, Dear David Knox, considering all the glaring problems in Kendrick Green's play that are appearing to have not been improved upon last season, I'm just curious to know what it is a scout saw in his college tape that made him a third-round talent, or first in our case in comparison with what scouts saw or didn't see in guys like Matt Filer or Ramon Foster that deemed them unworthy of being drafted. Logic tells me that it's a case of the bar being lowered for an undrafted free agent versus a draft pick. But as Mike Tomlin says, the standard is the standard, and it's easy to see who has or hasn't played to the standard. Thanks for all the good work, as always. And Alex, keep those highly detailed camp reports coming. What is it about Tuesdays? And Tuesdays is Rip Alex a new one on Twitter for some reason there. But you don't have to worry. Alex will keep doing what Alex keeps doing there. I wish I had a great answer for you, Daniel RC, about what it is about Kendrick Green that attracted them to him, and more specifically as early as they did. I mean, if Kendrick Green's a 6th-round pick for them or a 5th-round pick, we're saying, well, that didn't work. But you bump him up into the first, 3rd round and him not working. It's hard to look away, and I wish I could tell you I did not have Kendrick Green. I didn't even have Kendrick Green really because of knowing that they're probably going to get a center and all like that last year. Kendrick Green wasn't even that much on my radar, to be quite honest with you.
Right, same. Had I realized that Adrian Clem was at his pro day, I would have had him on my radar more than I did. In terms of what got Green into the 3rd round, it was some of the off-the-charts testing. I mean, this guy tested like a top-tier athlete because he is a really good athlete overall. His 40 time, his vertical, things like that. He's torquey. He's aggressive. He's a good finisher. So I get that to an extent. How does that compare with Filer and Foster? I mean, we're talking about someone else's evaluations, but Foster ran a really poor 40 time and was kind of a sloppy body. Filer played at a small school at D2 Bloomsburg. So we can talk about all those things all day, but for Green, they just like the overall athleticism, the aggressiveness, the finisher's mentality, while overlooking some of the just overall size, technique deficiencies. And again, him not really being a true center.
The thing about Filer and Foster, though, is, and Foster said this in a recent podcast interview, the big the big question was could he make the transition from tackle to guard? And really, in a sense, that was because Filer was a tackle at Bloomsburg, right?
Correct, and ended up playing both in Pittsburgh.
Right. So that was the big question there. And
Foster ran like a 4.3 something, which is not a good time to run.
Right. But with it, I don't have a great answer still for why Kendrick Green was a 3rd round draft pick.
Same. I will say I thought Green did have some wins. What I kind of started to conclude from just that Seattle game, he did better against 1 techs and guys that were, as Myers' term is, on his body, as opposed to 3 techs and guys more outside shade and more quote unquote off his body, to use the Pat Meyer vocabulary. And so that's just a thought that I have going forward. I mean, he had some wins. It's just very inconsistent. Sure. So it's a big dice roll, 50-50. If he's going to, have good hand placement and things like that. And so here's what I said last year. I've said before. Small guards do not work in Pittsburgh. Big guys work in Pittsburgh. Alan Faneca, Ramon Foster, even Matt Filer, Chris Kimiatu. Those guys weren't all Hall of Famers. Faneca was obviously, but the guys that have had even some success and the guys that maybe make up for a lack of innate great talent are the guys who have some size. And Kevin Dodson's a much bigger guy, a stronger guy, a longer guy. He's going to handle power better than Kendrick Green, especially against 3 techs. And so that's why I think Dodson is a better scheme fit for Pat Meyer's very aggressive, very set flat, set forward, pass set system.
All last season I was banging on Green. They said, well, he'll be better when you move him back to guard. And I said, I wouldn't count on that. And I will gladly eat my words if he gives me reason and wins this job and plays well throughout the season. I don't see it. At some point here, we'll see. Is John LeGlue, after 1 game, is John LeGlue the better option than Kendrick Green right now as a backup?
Based off of 1 game, LeGlue was a lot better. I'll let this whole process play out, but the fact that we're asking that question tells you all you need to know.
Why I'm starting to lose my voice here. Why all these podcasts are starting training camps taking a toll on Uncle
You got to finish strong, Dave. You got to be conditioned.
I don't know. I might leave squad.
Yeah. Reserve, retired, left squad designation.
I might have left squad designation on me here for too long. The game is passing me by, Alex. Wyatt Hubbard writes in, we have the relationships, or for Alex, what have the relationships been like for the quarterbacks at camp from what you can see? Are they helping each other out, or are we seeing a Ben/Mason relationship between them?
I am receiving a statement from Dave Bryan saying, quote, I may not be on the Terrible Podcast, but I'll be on a podcast. So we'll see. That's the official word from Dave Bryan. Be on a podcast. To the quarterback group, no, it feels very close. Obviously, I'm not in there to see them in meetings and what they're doing, in their downtime and things like that. But it seems like there are no egos in that room. it seems like they're all helping each other. Trubisky's been a really good influence and willing to help and teach these guys. And Mason, I think, has been very professional throughout this whole process as well. So from what I can tell, from a bird's eye view, it seems like a really good, fun, strong quarterback room with nobody trying to big man the other.
Alex, are you trying to say I lack self-awareness? Maybe self-awareness is aware of lack of self-awareness.
Yeah, right. Are you self-aware if you are aware that you lack self-awareness? That is a wormhole to go down.
I resemble that remark. Let's see here. Seth Bergstein. Hey, David, Alex, want to talk about Kendrick Green and Devin Bush. Green has a good attitude, but just gets physically dominated at his position. Bush looks like the worst linebacker in the league at times and takes his position for granted. I know they have draft pedigree, so are in the starter conversations, but I'd argue not only are they not starters, they shouldn't even be on the roster. Am I overreacting when I say if these two play significant snaps all year, they can tank the entire team, which is otherwise shaping up to be very good? Look, Seth, there is reason to be and has been reason to be concerned about both those guys. Bush has over a $3 million guaranteed salary. So the problem is who's behind him and who could, I'm not so much against the fact that he could potentially be off the roster. It's just who you're going to replace him with, and what is the cost versus reward, I guess, in that. Green, it's a lot different situation there because we're talking about a guy that you might not even know he's gone, from obviously from a cap and what he gives you aspect there. But it is, I guess what I'm saying, it's a fair question overall, Seth. And I don't think you're overreacting. You don't need, to me, from where I sit right now, the end of your statement here, I think it would be concerning if either of those two players played significant snaps during the 2022 season from where I sit right now.
Yeah, I get that. Both are going to have their issues and their struggles and at times be liabilities. So I understand the overall point you're making, and that would be an area. Now, would they tank the season might be a little too strong language there, especially Devin Bush. I don't know if he would tank the season. Kendrick Green could maybe have more issues in terms of just pressures and things like that allowed that would hurt this offense. But yeah, I think both guys would be considered weak links if they're playing a lot of football.
Here's hoping 1 week from now, the conversation is one or both of these guys doing something in a preseason game. We're saying, oh, well, that was good to see, Yeah,
it is just one game, and, you don't want to conclude too much based off of just one game. But, for both guys, they need to get better. That is undeniable.
Jeff Berg writes in, howdy, fellas. What would y'all say is the weakest position group on defense? On offense, he says, I'm thinking the offensive line is the weakest. Am I right? Thanks for the phenomenal coverage. Alex, the training camp info is beyond incredible! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point.
Well, thank you. In terms of the weakest, I mean, on offense, it's either O-line or quarterback. I'd probably lean offensive line right now. I think you asked me this yesterday, what starter group is the weakest, and I was leaning inside linebacker. Jack's been really solid, but besides that, you're not really quite sure what you're going to have or what you have currently. You could argue cornerback as well, but I think I would still lean inside linebacker right now.
And the second linebacker spot, inside linebacker spot specifically.
Right, because Jack I'm pretty comfortable with.
Right.
It's just what's next to him is the concern.
Why didn't you tell me you didn't play football before?
You didn't know that? You didn't know I was at Polk High and had 4 touchdowns? Yeah.
It's amazing the pushback that you get. Let's see here. Matt Palmer. Player compensation question. Thanks for all the terrific coverage. Hoping this team does not continue to put Connor Hayward in a situation where he's at the end of the line blocking like a tight end, but I wouldn't put it past him specifically. They continually put Eric Ebron at the end of the line and try to run behind him with awful results, he says. My question is about player compensation. You recently broke down how it works for an injury settlement, and that was real interesting. So my question is, how does it work for paying players for playoff games, since the salary is based off a 17-game schedule? Look, what they get is what they get. As far, you get into the playoffs, none of that, obviously, what they get, don't they get something from the league from being obviously Super Bowl winning team? And is it AFC Championship too, or no?
I think so. I don't know all the language there, but there's something carved out.
I don't remember about that, but it's not like they, if you get into the wild card game, you don't get an extra check out of that, situation.
Right. So good question there, though.
Let's see. I think we got most of them knocked out of the way here, Alex. I think we quite a few emails in here. So I think we're at an hour and a half right now. I have got to get Alex's lunch packed up and the crust cut off the sandwiches to send him back out to the Latrobe. 2 days left, Alex. We're almost there. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train anymore. So what are you looking for today?
They should be in shells because they've done the last 2 days in pads. The NFL mandates they have to be in shells. So it'll be a lower key practice today overall. So maybe just watching some of the one-on-one receiver DB type stuff, because whenever you're not in contact, I kind of like looking at some of those things a bit more.
I let you off the hook yesterday and forgot to get your overreaction of the day.
Well, we're out of time. So Kevin Dodson had a really good day yesterday, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come. So that might be my overreaction of the day.
All right, drive safe, take a towel, always take a towel, Alex. And with that, you can Follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex Kozora, and don't give him a hard time, especially on Tuesdays, at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. Going to have a great post up here in the next 24, 48 hours from Clayton on charting a lot of these quarterback throws from the other night. So he's got some great detailed info that I think a lot of you will like to check out as well too. Thanks to all of our contributors on the site. Really been doing a fantastic job. On top of that, Alex and I will be back in several hours from now to recap the Wednesday training camp practice with a special edition of the podcast. So within all that, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.